Trump is preparing nuclear tests, and this is the first time in 30 years. The information seems unbelievable, but we're going to try to figure it out in detail right now. Nuclear weapons are the main trend of 2026. The information that regularly appears in media headlines is frankly frightening for readers. China is preparing to increase its nuclear capabilities to become a direct competitor to Russia and the United States of America. Iran is secretly developing nuclear weapons to prevent a retaliatory strike from Israel and the forces of the United States of America in order to deliver such a strike themselves. Meanwhile, Washington claims to possess a secret weapon that Russia cannot even imagine. At the same time, Russia regularly declares its readiness to launch a nuclear strike in the event of losing the war in Ukraine or for other, often contrived reasons. The situation is further aggravated by the expiration of the treaty between the Russian Federation and the United States of America on measures to limit strategic offensive arms. Now, for the first time in more than 50 years, the United States and Russia are no longer restricted in their strategic nuclear capabilities and may potentially begin a new nuclear arms race. At the same time, US President Donald Trump openly declares that the country is ready to conduct nuclear tests for the first time in many decades. It is no longer a secret that the world is at a historic and dangerous moment, one that historians will be analyzing for a long time to come. But what is happening right now? That is the question that arises. Let's try to figure this out together. But before we start, I'd like to ask you to like this video and leave a comment. You can share your opinion, especially if you have your own version of the events that are happening. And now I'll start telling you everything we've gathered for you as of today. So, after the last nuclear treaty between the United States of America and Russia ended, the Trump administration announced the possibility of deploying additional nuclear warheads and conducting nuclear tests for the first time in more than 3 decades. These are critical and deliberate actions that could represent a very profound and fundamental revision of the strategic stability and arms control policy that the government of the United States of America has consistently and actively maintained for a period of nearly 40 years. According to the New York Times, within 5 days after the expiration of the New START treaty, senior officials of the American administration made a series of statements indicating that the White House is considering various options to strengthen the country's nuclear capabilities. Among these options are the resumption of nuclear weapons testing, which has not been conducted in the United States since 1992, as well as the possible deployment of additional warheads. If such decisions are implemented, Donald Trump will become the first American president since Ronald Reagan, under whom the number of nuclear weapons will increase. Earlier last year, Trump had already expressed his desire to conduct tests on an equal footing with China and Russia, but at that time, no concrete steps were taken. At this stage, the administration's plans remain uncertain. It is known that the president has instructed his aides to explore the possibility of resuming such tests. In addition, the option of reusing nuclear weapons currently in storage is being considered. However, neither the exact number of potentially deployed warheads nor the format of possible tests has, of course, been publicly specified. Former head of the National Nuclear Security Administration, Jill Ruby, who until last year led the U.S. Department of Energy division responsible for the design, testing, and production of nuclear weapons, described the situation as unclear. According to her, it still remains very unclear what exactly they are doing. These details, in the opinion of experts, are of key importance. They will determine whether Washington's actions will lead to a new arms race or if they are aimed at encouraging negotiations for a new trilateral agreement. The first signals about a possible change of course appeared immediately after the conclusion of the New START treaty, which we have already discussed. This document limited the number of strategic nuclear warheads that could be deployed by the United States of America and Russia to approximately 1,550 units for each respective side. President Trump rejected Putin's proposal for an informal extension of the agreement for 15 years without legal obligations, while the countries considered the possibility of negotiations on a successor treaty. On that very same day, the United States Under Secretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, Thomas J. DiNanno, delivered a comprehensive and formal speech in Geneva while attending the session at the Conference on Disarmament. In his speech, he stated that this treaty, New START, imposed unilateral restrictions on the United States that were unacceptable. He also recalled that during Trump's first term, the United States withdrew from two previous agreements with Russia, the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty and the Open Skies Treaty, citing violations by Moscow. DiNanno noted that New START did not cover the new classes of nuclear weapons being developed by Russia and China. According to him, any future treaty must also take into account China, which possesses the fastest growing nuclear arsenal in the world. Thus, the issue of the further development of US nuclear policy has become directly linked to the broader strategic agenda and the prospects for possible multilateral negotiations. In his speech in Geneva, Thomas DiNanno emphasized that after the expiration of New START, the United States is no longer bound by previous quantitative limitations. According to him, Washington is now free to strengthen deterrence in the interests of the American people. He noted that the United States will complete its current nuclear modernization programs, large scale projects that are being allocated hundreds of billions of dollars. This includes the construction of new silos for intercontinental ballistic missiles, the creation of new strategic submarines, and the development of new bombers. Separately, DiNanno stated that the United States maintains an undeployed nuclear capability that can be used if the security situation changes, provided that the President of the United States makes the corresponding decision. Among the options under consideration, he mentioned expanding existing forces as well as developing and deploying new theater nuclear systems, that is, weapons with shorter range. According to him, Russia has already deployed such systems in significant numbers. The New START treaty, it should be recalled, applied only to strategic weapons capable of striking targets at intercontinental distances. One specific area for a possible increase in capability could be changing the configuration of Ohio-class submarines. The United States Navy has 14 such strategic submarines in service. Each of them is equipped with 24 launch tubes for ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads. In accordance with the limitations of the New START treaty, 4 launch tubes on each submarine were decommissioned. Now, after the expiration of this treaty, the possibility of returning them to service is being considered. This would allow each submarine to carry additional missiles and overall potentially add hundreds of warheads to the already deployed arsenal. At the same time, the question remains open. Are such steps a genuine intention to expand nuclear forces, or are they a tool of leverage in future negotiations? In the history of the Cold War, such tactics were used as a way to push the other side toward dialogue. However, there is also a possibility that Russia and China will interpret such actions as a signal to build up their own capabilities. Up to now, China has shown limited interest in participating in arms control agreements, at least as long as its nuclear arsenal is significantly smaller than those of the United States and Russia. Last year, in the journal Foreign Affairs, nuclear strategists Franklin Miller and Eric Edelman noted that Beijing views willingness to engage in arms control as a sign of weakness and perceives transparency and verification mechanisms as intrusive and comparable to espionage. This stance complicates the prospects of reaching a multilateral agreement. The administration's statements have paid particular attention to the issue of nuclear testing. In Geneva, DiNanno explained in detail for the first time what President Donald Trump meant when he spoke about the possibility of testing on an equal footing. These words were spoken last year, shortly before Trump's meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Later, in an interview with the New York Times, Trump stated that he had discussed nuclear issues with the Chinese leader, but did not provide any details at the time. At first, some American experts outside the government suggested that this referred to a return to large-scale underground nuclear tests, which were characteristic of the Cold War era. Such tests were accompanied by powerful underground explosions that created shock waves, which spread through the Earth's crust and were detected all over the world. Similar explosions are easily detected by international monitoring systems. The United States stopped conducting such tests in 1992. Russia and China have also abandoned them, adhering to the provisions of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, despite the fact that the US Senate has not ratified this treaty. The exception in this matter was North Korea, which conducted 6 underground tests between 2006 and 2017, dealing a blow to hopes for a global moratorium. The treaty itself, adopted in 1996, provides for a ban on any nuclear explosions, regardless of their yield, the so called zero yield principle. In his speech in Geneva, Thomas DiNanno made it clear that the Trump administration believes Russia and China have already conducted such covert tests. He stated that China had carried out nuclear explosive tests while trying to conceal them. In particular, DiNanno mentioned a possible test on June 22, 2020, which, according to him, took place closer to the end of Donald Trump's first presidential term. At the same time, the International Monitoring System, which is specifically designed to oversee compliance with the nuclear test ban, stated in a recent announcement that it had not detected any test explosions on that date. Moreover, according to American officials, over the past 5 years, there have been ongoing debates among members of the U.S. intelligence community about whether such a test, as was claimed, actually took place at all. Nevertheless, in his speech, DiNanno did not express any doubts about the credibility of the administration's claims. He also stated that China used decoupling technology to conceal the tests. This technique involves isolating a nuclear detonation in such a way that the shock waves are not transmitted into the Earth's crust and are not detected by seismic stations. One method is to conduct the explosion in a special cavity or a container with reinforced steel walls capable of absorbing the energy. The United States has its own experience with the use of similar technologies. Between 1958 and 1961, long before the global test ban came into effect, American developers conducted more than 40 tests. Despite the then existing Soviet American moratorium, these experiments were also aimed at reducing the likelihood of detection. In his speech, DiNanno did not elaborate on the practical consequences that his statements might have, but he once again used the phrase on an equal basis, which was interpreted as a possible signal of the United States' willingness to consider similar actions. Thus, the issue of resuming tests turned out to be connected not only with the assessment of other countries' actions, but also with a broader deterrence strategy. This is the current situation regarding nuclear security in the world and at the same time regarding nuclear danger. Write to us in the comments below this video and let us know how you think the situation will develop further. We will definitely keep our finger on the pulse, gather new details for you, and as soon as there are updates in this story, we will be the first to tell you about them. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything, and we'll see you in the next broadcasts. My name is Anastasia Husarieva. Take care of yourselves and wash your hands with soap. Bye all.